Hello from Jonathan and from me. Welcome to the programme.
Well, first tonight, the heartbreaking moment when friends and family of Lance Corporal Adam Drain welcomed his body home.
Hundreds lined the streets of Wootton Bassett in Wiltshire as his cortege slowly passed through. Some knew him well, others just wanted to pay their respects.
Adam from Stanningfield near Bury St Edmunds was the 100th British soldier to die in Afghanistan this year. But for his family, he was so much more than just a number, as Emma Baker now reports.
Returning home for the final time. A son, a brother, a loved one to so many. Lance Corporal Adam Drain was the 100th British soldier to die in Afghanistan this year. For his family, he was quite simply their pride and joy. As the cortege passed through the Wiltshire village of Wootton Bassett, Adam's family placed red and yellow roses on the hearse in honour of his regiment's colours. His fiancée wept. Hundreds of others were visibly moved. In his home village of Stanningfield near Bury St Edmunds today, the 23-year-old was also being remembered. Dozens of flowers have been left by the village war memorial, with messages to such a cherished member of the community. Some comfort to his family.
Des said to me it was very humbling to see the amount of support and love that there was for Adam. Probably half a dozen people from the village have gone down to see Adam come back in, and obviously the family. And there is a comfort by the fact that he's home. So there is some comfort there.
Lance Corporal Drain had been serving in Afghanistan for 2 months with the 1st Battalion, the Royal Anglian Regiment. He was killed last Monday at a checkpoint in the Helmand province. In St Mary's Church in Adam's local town of Bury St Edmunds, a book of condolence has been opened in a chapel specially dedicated to the Royal Anglians. A former pupil of King Edward VI School, Adam was a popular figure.
Adam and his family are very well known in this community. They're extremely respected, and so many people have come up to me and they've said just how sad they are for the family. And I mean, it's bad to lose somebody at any time, but losing somebody at this particular time of year is devastating.
Reading through the Book of Condolence, it's clear to see how much Adam's death has touched the community here in Bury St Edmunds. One entry reads, Adam, a courageous soldier and a true friend. Another simply says, forever remembered with immense pride. As St Mary's Church gets ready for Christmas, it is also now preparing for a very different service. Adam's funeral. Emma Baker, Anglia News, Bury St Edmunds.
Well, staying with the army, and an inquest has begun to hear how 3 Royal Anglian soldiers were killed by so-called friendly fire in Afghanistan 2 years ago. Privates Aaron McClure from Ipswich, Robert Foster from Harlow and John Thrumble from Malden died in August 2007 during the Anglians' last tour of duty in Helmand. A coroner heard these soldiers were under heavy fire in Helmand when a US aircraft from RAF Lakenheath dropped a bomb on them instead of a Taliban position 1 kilometre further north. The inquest has now been adjourned until February.
Meanwhile, the government's announced a major shake-up of defence funding aimed at cutting the number of lives lost in Afghanistan by channelling more money to the front line.
But it's a shake-up that'll mean the end of one of our historic RAF bases. RAF Cottesmore in Rutland is to close. Some of its operations will move to RAF Wittering in Cambridgeshire, but there will be job losses.
The MOD says this and other cost-cutting measures will help to finance a fleet of new Chinook helicopters needed in Afghanistan. Well, Matthew Hudson joins us now from RAF Cottesmore now. Matt, a very sad day for an historic base.
Indeed. I mean, local people here woke up to speculation in the media this morning. They had to wait until mid-afternoon for the official announcement, the news that they had been dreading. This base is indeed going to close, and that's bound to have serious implications for the local economy. Roland Eason's garage has enjoyed business from RAF Cottesmore for 30 years. It's sold and repaired cars for RAF personnel, as well as supplying them with fuel. About 20% of business comes from the base. Not for much longer. News that it's to close is bad for this part of Rutland.
It's a bad day, yeah. I think it's a bad day for everybody in Rutland. You know, there's a lot of civilians work up there as well as RAF personnel. So yeah, it's for Rutland, it's not a good day. It's not the end of the world, but it's not a good day.
In the Commons this afternoon, Cottesmore's proud 71-year history was ended by a few words from the Defence Secretary.
We will reduce now the size of our Harrier fast jet force by 1 squadron and close RAF Cottesmore and consolidate the Harrier force at RAF Wittering.
Cottesmore is currently home to 4 squadrons of Harrier jets. 1 is to be axed. The other 3 will move to RAF Wittering, 12 miles down the A1 near Peterborough. Some civilian staff may be able to move with the base, but job losses look inevitable. Cottesmore Base opened in 1938. During the early war years, it was home to a bomber squadron. From 1943 until 1945, RAF Cottesmore became a US Air Force base. It returned to RAF command after the war. During the late 50s and 60s, it was a nuclear base. For the last decade, it's been the home of the Harrier. At present, RAF Cottesmore has 3,500 service personnel, their families and support staff based there. Closing the base will help pay for 22 new Chinook helicopters, which will be used in operations in Afghanistan. The first 10 will be ready in 2013. Following the announcement, the area's Conservative MP had this to say.
I'm really angry that the government have made such a mess of the economy and the budgeting for their defence spending that my constituency and my RAF base is going to be made to pay the price.
Crews from Cottesmore have taken part in more than 8,000 sorties in Afghanistan. Today's announcement didn't say when the base will close, but it's expected to be within the next 2 years.
Well, let's head back to Matt now. Matt, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Just mixed fortunes for both of these bases.
Absolutely, Jonathan. I mean, we've seen civilian staff leaving here this evening. The professional future for at least some of those is now very uncertain. Of course, it's good news for Wittering. Not only is its future assured for the time being, but it's actually going to grow in size. Meanwhile, in Norfolk, RAF Marham faces the distinct possibility of losing one of its 4 squadrons of Tornado airplanes. I mean, there are tough decisions now being made in the public sector, and I suppose the Armed Forces is waking up to the fact that they are not exempt from that.
Thank you, Matt. A court has heard how a convicted murderer joked with a neighbour as he dug a deep hole in his garden of his home.
Prosecutors at Chelmsford Crown Court said Peter Tobin, who's 63 and from Renfrewshire in Scotland, was digging a grave for the body of the Essex teenager Dinah McNichol, who went missing in 1991. He denies her murder. Well, our reporter Tom Barton has been in court today. Tom.
Yes, today the prosecution continued to present their evidence against Peter Tobin. As you say, we heard from Tobin's former neighbour, David Martin. Now, he saw Tobin digging a hole which the prosecution say was Dinah's grave. We also heard from Tobin's ex-wife and from forensics experts who say they are absolutely certain that Tobin's fingerprints were found on the bin bags that Dinah's body was discovered in. All of that evidence heard today, both by the jury and by Dinah's father.
Ian McNichol was in court today to hear the evidence against the man accused of killing his 18-year-old daughter, Dinah, 18 years ago. That man is convicted child killer Peter Tobin. The jury has heard the 63-year-old is already serving a life sentence for killing 15-year-old Vicky Hamilton. Vicky's body was found alongside Dinah McNichol's in this garden at 50 Irvine Drive in Margate, Kent, 2 years ago. Today, Tobin's neighbour at the time, David Martin, told the court he'd seen Tobin digging a hole in his garden during the summer that Dinah disappeared.
Mr Martin told the court that Tobin had been chest deep in the hole, that it had been so deep he'd jokingly asked whether Tobin was digging for Australia. In fact, Tobin said he was digging a sandpit for his son, and when Martin later noted that the sandpit had been filled in, Tobin said it was because social services had told him to do so.
The prosecution claims that hole was the grave in which Dinah's body was found more than 16 years later. Forensic experts told the court that Dinah's body was buried 2.5 feet underground. It was wrapped in 15 heavy-duty bin bags. Those bin bags had thumb and fingerprints on them. The jury heard from a fingerprint specialist who said she had absolutely no doubt that those prints belonged to Tobin. The court also heard from Tobin's former wife, Cathy Wilson, seen here in June. She said that Tobin had regularly driven between Margate and her home in Portsmouth so he could maintain contact with his son Daniel. That route, the prosecution claims, would have taken him past Liphook in Hampshire, where Dinah had been attending a music festival and was hitchhiking home when she disappeared. Cathy Wilson said that she left Peter Tobin in 1990. Within 18 months, he'd killed Vicky Hamilton. 6 months later, Dinah McNichol disappeared. Tobin denies killing Dinah McNichol